Hey everybody, welcome. Today's video I'm going to show you how I made these cute cats and a little I'm sorry card using Technique Junkies products. Here we go. All right, so I've got here these curly-tailed cats and I'm going to show you how I made this card. We're going to do it just almost exactly the same. Sometimes I'll deviate, but today I'm not. So these are from the new February release, Curly Tailed Cats, 5981. Then I'm using an older stamp, I'm Sorry, from Technique Junkies. And one of my personal favorites, Dotted Blooms, S897. Just love, love, love that stamp. I've got Catherine Puller ink in Hot Tub. I've got Versamark ink. I've got white embossing powder. I've got VersaFine Clair and Nocturne and also Twilight. And I've got 3 pieces of white cardstock, or 2 pieces of white cardstock and 1 piece of black with like a frame cut out of it, because I don't like to waste my favorite black cardstock. And then I've got a white card base. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start out with the very background here. So the background has 2 layers. And let me just move stuff out of the way here. Make sure I'm in frame and everything. Want to make sure I get that card front right into the corner there. And I'm going to grab my dotted blooms. I'm going to lay them down and then I'm going to put magnets where I can. Sometimes you can't, and that's okay. You just want to make sure your paper's butted up there into the corner if you need to stamp more than once, which I typically do with a background stamp. So I'm going to go in with the Hot Tub, and this is kind of a retro turquoise color. I did start out trying to do them in turquoise and pink, but I changed my mind. It was too busy, so I just kept it with the Hot Tub color. I'm just going to make sure this is good and pressed down here. I'm going to use my little pressure tool. And I'm loving it, but I need to do another coat because I'm just not quite as saturated as I want to be. So I'll just coat the stamp once more with the Hot Tub and give it a good press. Make sure I'm putting pressure all over the entire stamp. Don't want to miss any, although I will be trimming this down, of course. There we go. I'm perfectly happy with that. And I'm just going to set that aside and let it dry because I'll be doing some heat embossing on it later. And I want to make sure that the ink is completely dry. Not that it necessarily matters because I'll be using clear embossing powder, but it just kind of helps with the whole aesthetic of the card. So we're done with dotted blooms here. And the next thing we need to do is we need to do the I'm Sorry. So I'm going to get this spare piece of black paper. And this, by the way, is the Tim Holtz black heavy stock. It's very luxurious and very expensive. So that's why I didn't want to waste the whole piece on a card mat. I'm stingy with it. Y'all, it's like, I don't know, almost $2 a sheet. I'm telling you though, I love it. But I'm not here to talk about that. Just here to talk about what we're doing here. So I am going to coat this with anti-static powder because I'll be using white embossing powder. And it notoriously will stick to the black paper. And you'll have a hot mess on your hands. I'm going to go in with Versamark. And I'm going to actually stamp once and then stamp again. Just to make sure I have full coverage. Because when I stamp there, it's going to lift some of that anti-static powder. So there we go. Second time, perfect. I can see it's nice and wet. And I'll go ahead and white heat emboss that. And I've got here just some Wow super fine or ultra fine or something like that. And I'll just pour it over. Make sure I've got it on there good and thick, and then gently tap off any excess. And then I'll go ahead and put my embossing powder away here to try and avoid the mess. You know, it is part of the process, although it's boring. You have to think about everything that you do when you're making a video. And I'm going to go ahead and just take a really fine brush and just kind of knock off any little excess stray pieces that wound up here. Don't want those there. Once I get them moving, I blow on it. All right, now I am going to heat emboss this from the back, and it's going to look very awkward because there's my camera, so on and so forth. But what I've found is if you emboss from the back, you get a smoother emboss. And I apologize again, it's very hard to see. And big old truck going by, sorry about that. Nothing I can do about it. Need my window open, it's hot. And then I'll go ahead and hit it a little bit from the front just to make sure I get any spots that I missed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut this out. If you don't like to fussy cut, you can leave it in a square, but I really want as many cats showing as I can. So I've gone ahead and cut that out off camera, and I've put these strips down on from scrapbook.com because I do want to pop it up, and now I'm just going to set that aside because I don't need it right now. So I've got here a piece of white. What am I doing here? Got me. Oh yeah. I've got another piece of white here. And what I want to do is I'm going to trim this down to a little bit under 4 1/4 by a little bit under 5 1/2. This is going to be my first matte layer. And I have a piece of paper here because I'm going to be spreading direct to paper the hot tub ink. So just to make the whole card kind of cohesive. I'm just doing the edges because the rest isn't even going to show up. And that'll all kind of even itself out. Plus that, you're not going to see a whole lot of it. All right, let me move my piece of paper here, and then we'll go on to the next step. So I'm going to grab my background again, now that it's dry. I'm going to place it in the corner, make sure it's fully in the corner here, because I'll take several coats of ink to get the black that I really want with these cats. And I'm going to show you a trick that really would surprise you in trying to get something black, because there are also varying shades of black. And I'll go ahead and just pop a magnet or two here and there because I have room to do it. But I want to make sure that nothing's touching the sides there so that the stamp sits flat down. Then I'm going to grab my Versamark ink in the Nocturne, and I'm going to do my first stamping and just make sure I really saturate all those cats. And I've got my clear embossing powder ready to go because I will be clear heat embossing the cats. So just tamping down the black ink, nice and wet. And notice I'm not putting any static powder on, don't need it. I'm not going to be doing anything more than what I'm doing right now to the background. So I'm not worried about like ink blending into it or painting on it or anything else. So if I get some clear embossing powder, you'll never know. So I'm going to give this lots and lots of good pressure with my pressure tool. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking for my Twilight ink because I didn't get it out. But we are going to go right over the top of that black with the Twilight. So it's fine, you know, I'm not mad, but I want blacker. I want this thing to be just pitch black. So I'm giving a good coat of the Twilight. And then I'll go ahead and give it some pressure again. And I'll be doing 2 coats of the Twilight because I want lots of thick pigment on there to be able to emboss onto. So notice how it's kind of a blue-black, but it's still black. So I thought I'd show you that neat trick to get a nice deep black. I imagine you could probably do this with a purple as well. I don't know, haven't tried it. This is a trick that I've tried and it works, so I don't see any need to change it. All right, turn on my heat tool so I'm ready to go. And again, lots and lots of good pressure. Make sure I get all those kitties well defined. Well, y'all know that I'm a cat person, so when I saw this stamp, I was, yeah, please. Yes, please. Give me the retro cats. They're my favorite. So then I'm just going to pour embossing powder all over them. I'll do one side, then I'll flip it over and do the other side, trying to be careful not to touch any of the part that I've already done. And again, I'm going to heat emboss this mostly from the back. It's going to be awkward to look at because, again, I'm about, I don't know, maybe 24 inches away from my camera, so I have to have this. And you may see a little smoke at one point. No worries, no fires happened here in the making of this video. I'm just trying to scoot that off of there without touching anything. And yeah, it's very, very hard to get this in camera, but you can see as they start to go. Again, heat embossing from the back. I think this is the one that smokes. Smoking cat. Because I get it too close because, yeah, I'm trying to keep you in camera. Generally, I do this over to the side where it's down kind of low. And I can kind of control what's might be burning. So then I'll get one half done and I'll just flip it over and do the other half. There we go. Trying to keep you in view here. And make sure I don't miss any. Okay, it looks like you can't see the smoke. I started to see smoke and I went, whoa, stop. Move away from that area. I love watching that right there. So see how much smoother that is doing it from the back? And then I just go ahead and hit it a little bit from the front just to make sure I didn't miss any. And there you've got your beautifully smooth little sassy cats. Now I want to let that cool. And I've got this part, the very first matte layer. I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. Maybe I'm going to glue it down and maybe I'm going to fight with my glue. There we go. Come on. I'm getting blinder and blinder. I can barely see that little hole. Make sure I get plenty of glue. By the way, the paper that I'm using, the plain paper for this, I'm using 110-pound accent opaque. I get that from Amazon. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay this frame down. See, I'm waiting for my cats to cool before I trim them, and then I'm going to lay this frame down on top of it. So you see that it only leaves about, I don't know, a smidge of the blue on the outside. The inside will be covered, so I'm not worried about that. I just want to try and make sure that I get it even on here. And then just give it a press down. Again, that's that expensive Ranger paper. All right, my cats are cool enough to stick in my trimmer, so I'm going to go ahead and trim those down. I'm going to trim them down to a little bit under 4 1/4, or a little bit under 4 by a little bit under 5 1/4. You know, I'm just making sure I decide which side I want trimmed down. So not a bunch, just a little. Okay. Now it's time to put the whole thing together. So you see it's going to barely leave any black there. And you could skip that step if you wanted to, but I feel like just giving a couple of matte layers really enhances the card. And this is going to be, you know, one of my favorite cards, so I'm glad that I'm going to have two of them. Not that I ever need to apologize. Oh, Lord, I wish. And I just want to make sure that I get this down here as fairly even as I can get it. And then just make sure it's good and stuck down. And my paper's a little warped, so I'm just making sure that I'm pushing it down nice and tight. And then I'll go ahead and lay something heavy on it for a minute. All right, we've got that down nice and tight. Now it's time to complete the card here. So here's I'm sorry, and I'm just going to peel off the backer off this sticky tape, this double-sided foam tape. And like I said, if you don't like to fussy cut, you could definitely, I mean, you could probably use your scan and cut. I don't know, I just got mine, so I haven't discovered all the things you can and can't do with it. But I am putting this down in the corner. You could put it smack in the middle if you wanted to. I just want to go oddball with it. And then I've got these little silver disc shape confetti, and I'm just going to put some, I'm going to put 5 of them. I'm just going to kind of decide on my placement, put my glue down, and then pop them down, and this card will be done. I can see myself using these cats for years to come because, well, you know I'm a cat person, and they're retro, and they're just super cool. So don't forget you can save 10% by using my discount code TJ10Color for any stamps that you buy from Technique Junkies. Now, the new releases, when they first come out, they're 15% off, and you can't use my code for those, but you can use it for everything else. So here we go. We've got our shiny little I'm sorry apologetic cat card. Isn't that cute? I hope you like this video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Bye-bye.